Joining me for our third take on how to buy a business part 3 is Brandon again. Brandon, welcome. Excited to have you here.
Glad to be back, George.
Yeah, so where we left off is the broker, buyer, owner meeting. Assuming that was a success, what generally happens next is the buyer is going to submit a LOI, or letter of intent. So bringing this up to speed, recapping everything, Brandon, can you talk a little bit about an LOI and why now is the time to submit it?
Absolutely. So pretty simple. You're at the offer LOI stage. LOI basically means letter of intent, or it's a non-binding offer. Basically, it's a less formal version of an actual offer to purchase like you would see typically used when you buy a home or a piece of property. The beauty of the LOI is it establishes the baseline contingencies of the deal. And this is where so much focus is often misdirected, misunderstood, and really not capitalized on by both parties when agreeing to it. The LOI is the template of how your deal is going to look. It's not the final APA or purchase document, but it is the real meat and potatoes. And like everything in life, if your foundation's bad, it's going to lead to trouble down the road.
And what's the difference between an LOI and an IOI?
Great question. IOI, indication of interest. You'll see IOIs used typically more in like a larger middle market deal where you may have an auction process taking place. Or, for example, we had one received the other day for a hunting products manufacturer that we represent. The firm coming in said, look, early interest, we see your base numbers, we've done some quick analysis on the sim. Here's an IOI of X amount. If we're in the ballpark, we'd love to move forward, have more owner discussions, and then maybe submit an LOI. But if we're not even close, we don't want to waste time. Beautiful. A lot of firms do that. Most deals, the average searcher or small strategic buyer, they're not going to use an IOI. But for larger, either very large strategic deals or very large mid-market deals, you will see brokers request IOIs be submitted at a certain timeline to help weed down the number of conversations an owner can realistically have. Owner can't have 30 conversations in 2 months. Can they have 4 or 5 for the right people and the right strategic buyer and the right layout? Yes. An IOI is a very condensed, scaled down version of an LOI, but at least gives indication of interest as it states to what we're looking to accomplish and what as a buyer views at first glance should be a deal they'd want to do.
So if I understand correctly, an IOI is going to be for a larger deal, let's say closer to that $5 million in enterprise value or purchase price, and you submit it after you receive the SIM generally? Like, can you have some sort of idea, like this makes sense for me?
And yeah, then, that'd be prudent.
Okay. And then you move forward in the process, talk to the broker, talk to the owner, everything makes sense. And that's when you would submit an LOI.
Yes. Basically, the IOI, you've got a chance to review some financials like you would get in the SIM, some basic understanding, get an idea exactly what company it may be. Because remember, before the blind profile and the NDA is revealed, it may say hunting products manufacturer. This person may not want X type. They may only want guns or stands or duck blind, whatever. I could go down a list of different hunting products. It may be based in a different part of the country they don't want. So no, they're not going to submit it before, but at least after that point, they have a general understanding, base layout of the financials. And typically for those listening, the larger the deal, more often the better financials are going to be or records kept. So you expect the EBITDA or SD, if you want to go that level, if you want to say that word, it's going to be fairly pretty accurate. Now, whether it needs to be renormalized or QV done to make sure it's perfect is a different discussion we can get to in the LOI phase coming up. But you're not expecting a massive swing. So you indicate, and if you've done deals, you know the multiples. Yeah, we feel comfortable at a 5 times on this deal, IOI indicating that such.
And then for the LOI, like what should be going through the buyer's head when they're like submitting or about to submit an LOI? Meaning like everything checks the boxes thus far, like I want to move forward in the process, or because I know there's a period of exclusivity oftentimes with LOIs too, where people might think this gives me a better chance of, giving a yes, no, or on the decision because I have this exclusivity. So how should a buyer think about when to submit an LOI?
I think there's 2 phases. One, if you've been searching and this is the industry you know you want to be in and you have committed capital, once you get a good enough feeling, now that's a kind of a vaguer term I'm using, but let's be honest. If you look at the sim, you've been looking around, you know what you see when you see it. You say you looked at 100 deals and you see this one, you know it feels good. One, by this point, if you've been doing this for a while, you can produce that LOI sooner or at a faster pace. You want to do it when you feel that way about the deal, or at least have a good understanding of the deal. I would never say submit one before you have a real understanding or at least a conversation with the owner. There are a lot of firms that see certain trade businesses, for example, HVAC, plumbing, or certain industries, they're going to throw an LOI just because they want the exclusivity to start really diving in. The problem is that LOI is not thoroughly thought through. So now it leads to a whole bunch of other negotiation issues on the back end when that LOI doesn't hold up its meat, or buyer feels they found other issues with the deal that now they want to renegotiate. And we'll discuss that a little bit later, I know, because that's a whole nother topic of concern for me as a broker, but also for sellers. But mainly, you just want to submit the LOI when you have a good understanding. You should have understanding at some point what the multiple is, and obviously the brokers can explain and probably show you good comps, and other providers can as well of what that should look like. You should understand what you're getting into. You should know the company structure, where your role would be, how you would fund it, know your basic debt service. Then you submit the LOI and have a good understanding of what you're planning to do. If you don't have those pieces in place and you're trying to rush it, you'll pretty much stumble and fall out of the race. If you do have it, that allows you then to, as you said, the exclusivity period, work through those issues and confirm what you need to do and get your due diligence done. But if you're throwing something out there with a long exclusivity, with no understanding, there's a pretty good chance you're going to get pushback from the other side saying, we're not signing that because you've given us no reason to believe you can facilitate and have done enough homework to get this deal done. And that is the biggest pushback I see as a broker and working with a lot of sellers is they get either unsolicited or very cheaply thrown together LOIs that say, we're going to pay you a price. We're not quite sure how we're going to do it. Here's a long exclusivity timeline. You need to sign it. And you understand, why do I want to get pulled off the market with very little understanding of how this deal is going to work? Or, oh, they're offering me everything I wanted up front. A lot of times that's just not going to happen. It's not going to finish the way it starts.
I know this is different for each broker and each deal. So painting a broad stroke here, what information does the buyer have? Is it just the SIM? Is it SIM and financial statements before they submit an LOI?
Typically, you at least will have the SIM or some kind of informational packet breaking down what's going on. There should have been at least a buy-sell meeting, at least once, maybe two or three, depending on how in-depth you need to go. And very often, too, you will have at least seen past 3 years' tax returns, financials, maybe some industry-specific questions if it's a strategic buyer saying, hey, for example, I'm a physical therapy clinic owner. I want to buy more physical therapy clinics. What is your average billing per therapist at your clinic? Does it line up with my therapist? Or are you maxing out potential and there's nowhere else to go? Do you have any pending legal issues? There'll be some discovery questions like that that are good to get out the way that indicate, is there some synergy here? Or B, we don't have any of that. We have no idea how to start. Well, okay, if you don't have it now, we'll just put the LOI in place, but just understand that we're going to have to discuss this down the road. And this is a criteria of mine I'm going to have in due diligence.
Yeah, you either have a good, healthy amount of information or no information at all.
And surprisingly, that's how it happens. And some owners, to be fair, will not release a lot of information until they have the LOI in place. For good or bad, that strategy can backfire based on how sophisticated they are, how well documented their financials and other issues are. And all that you have to kind of get a feel from the broker of how do these books look? Is this a good deal? Is this the wife's been the bookkeeper for 30 years. We have no idea what's going on. Or is this a really well-respected accounting firm that's got everything lined up that can be produced in minutes? That feel will give you a lot better indication of how quick to move to and what to expect.
And you touched on this, and it's probably an edge case here too, is a new business comes to market. It's a competitive business and people are submitting virtually the LOI almost with the NDA, it seems like. So in a competitive market, how do you make an LOI stand out?
My biggest thing I stress to buyers, especially those who aren't either have done this before or are high-level family offices or private equity, make it as detailed as you can. I know that's going to sound counterintuitive. You may not have enough. But the more you put on paper, the more the seller understands what you're trying to accomplish and how specific your timelines are, how you plan to pay, funding, and for the love of God, please make sure you indicate what kind of sale it is. Is it an asset? Is it a stock sale? You'd be surprised how many don't even have the basic terms in there to understand how to, because remember, for those listening, the owner has to calculate their tax burden as well. And the LOI gives an indication of what that tax burden and exit value may be. ARAP, we're talking working capital. There's a bunch of factors that go in. The more you outline and allow them to calculate what they're going to walk away with, or at least presumably walk away with, the more comfortable they're going to be with this offer. Nothing's worse than people saying, we'll figure out working capital later. We'll figure out ARAP later. We'll figure out this is a stock sale. If you see the tax returns in the most recent balance sheet, you should have a pretty good idea what you're looking at. And if you have a question, let's get that out the way first. Or if not, mention, hey, working capital, we're going to peg that to help with the price, but we're going to get that done in the first 30 days. Don't leave those contingencies open air, because there are sellers, for good and bad too, George, that will take advantage of that and leverage it down the road against a buyer and hold them hostage with it. Whether it's right or wrong, I've seen it done. And same for buyers, waiting until the very end to renegotiate, and that can dramatically swing the price and the value, and it'll cost you a deal anyway. So be as specific and thorough as you can. I know it's not always going to be the perfect recipe, and I know certain trade business and other industries are very hot. They're going to get LOIs thrown at them, but you need to understand your sophistication and be as clear as you can. And if you need help, we are here to help provide things to make sure you include in there, or expect a counter or a rejection. If there's a lot of competition, you might just get rejected. If there is close, maybe a few little counterpoints, but that's okay. That's good. That means you're very close on agreement. That's where you want to start, not way far apart or misunderstood.
So I guess if the broker's coming back to you to be like, hey, your LOI is in the top 5 of everything we received, like, we need to address like these points, that's giving the buyer an indication that you're close on getting things done. If it's a total rejection, someone's just blowing you out of the water and you're not getting the deal.
That or you just grossly underperformed on the LOI.
Right.
Which I've seen some people submit LOIs don't even indicate stock or asset sale, just straight rejection. Well, what do you mean? If you didn't put enough thought into this deal to even have that baseline understanding what you're purchasing, you don't know what you're purchasing. And that's a dangerous buyer. And I'm sorry for those of you listening who don't agree with me. That's not how you want to start a transaction for multi-million dollars, not knowing how you're going to do a deal. Now, if something comes up during the deal and it has to be changed for structure issues, that's a different discussion, especially if it's an unknown or a hidden liability that wasn't there or disclosed to all parties. That being said, the more specific, the more clear, the more in-depth, the better off you are. Starting with that gauge, put as much as you can in there and give yourself room to enforce it in your due diligence period too. It benefits you more in the long run to get stuff you want access to and completed.
If I put my buyer hat on here, like how we enter this conversation is you're either going to have no information or you're going to have a lot of information. So I feel for the buyers when they have no information. How do you structure an LOI if you have no information? But it sounds like you're saying you just have a huge backlog of contingencies.
Yeah, and that's good. You want them in there. It holds everybody accountable. Nothing's worse than a deal that's agreed to, even though an LOI is technically non-binding, but there's no actual structure to it. It allows for deviation left and right by all parties. The more you have in the timelines and the guidance, the quicker it is to kind of keep everybody focused, whether it's the broker, seller, buyer, accountants, lender. We can go on down the list of attorneys. It helps guide everybody. When there's room for variation and deviation, it's going to hit more roadblocks than you want. And very often, a good broker and good firm can give you a lot of really good areas to make sure basic boilerplate language you should have in there. Okay. Is it going to cover everything? You can never cover everything in an LOI. You just physically can't. It's not the AP, and it's also not, you can also anticipate certain issues sometimes. But there are people in the transaction there to help you include what you need to get the deal going and to feel comfortable. And remember, it's an LOI. If it doesn't work, you can walk. That's okay. It's a non-binding agreement. So you're not at the APA stage where you've already signed the purchase agreement. Now you find out a week later, there's something wrong. You're not done with it.
And then another question that I think, like, it depends on which broker, what location, and what deals. At the LOI phase, when does it make sense, if at all, for the broker to request some sort of deposit to be put in escrow?
Great question. We always request at least some form of a small deposit. I don't do a percentage of X amount, typically 5 to 10 grand. Why? If you can't write a check that day for 5 to 10 grand, you just outed yourself, whether you filled out the financial form correctly or not. And honestly, it's just called goodwill. You're telling the seller, I'm doing something productive and putting my money where my mouth is. Yes, it's not going to get your deal done, but it does matter. And funny you brought that up. We had a client in early January said, I can't get you a deposit. I'm like, you can't do a deposit. Well, I don't have a checking account. Where's your money in the financial statement you provided? I literally had that conversation. It was like, sir, you're all rejecting this. We're taking it back. What do you mean? You can't provide deposit. Goodbye. There's material, the LOI cannot be enforced. And if you get any pushback, and that's just a classic way for sellers and brokers to say, just prove something here. Show capacity. Put it in escrow. It's non-binding. And if you're scared of losing $5 grand on a deposit for something, you've got bigger problems than buying a much larger business. Let's be honest. Not to be rude, but it's true.
Are you still requiring deposits if you're giving the buyer like very little information to construct their LOI?
Always require a deposit, regardless. But our deposits are always refundable. We've kept 2 deposits out of probably 4,000 transactions in the last 25 years. And those were both because buyers completely failed to comply and requested multiple days pushback on a sale for 3 times and then didn't show up at the sale. So yeah, it was pretty dang extreme. Those are the only 2 times ever. And the seller said, I'm not paying the legal cost. Take the deposit out and pay for the legal cost. That was what it was used for.
Okay, so the LOI is accepted and it was a good LOI in this situation. What does the due diligence period look like? Is there exclusivity? Is there not exclusivity? How long is the due diligence? Yeah, really a high level, like what does the due diligence look like?
Great question. Broad stroke, it's anywhere from 60 to 120, maybe a little bit longer days. And that can also vary on 2 things. One, how prepared is the listing that went to market and has information already gathered to be provided? 2, is financing involved? And then 3, if something is discovered. Typically, you'll see 90 to 120 days minimum in the LOI to give the buyer plenty of time to do their homework. That being said, can it be extended by written consent by both parties, or is it modified some? Yes, if needed. That being said, with exclusivity, that may affect how long the due diligence period is given. If an owner says, look, I'll take it off the market but I'm not going to give you 120 days. I'm only going to give you 90, right? Because I feel like 90 is enough for you to know right at 90 days, is this deal going to happen or not? Or do you feel like we want to go further? That can affect the timeline as well. I've seen owners negotiate, hey, I don't want to be exclusive to you. I'll honor my agreement, but I'm keeping my advertisement. I want the broker to keep it advertised. We will not solicit other offers. We will not field and accept any other offers, but I'll give you a longer due diligence period because of that. And I've seen the opposite occur. Again, everything is negotiable. And I think sometimes buyers forget that. Everything may not be market. Everything is negotiable. And to some owners, they're going to negotiate every phase just because they want the best deal for them too. You have to remember that. It is personal, but it's not personal, to say it as generically as possible.
And then during this due diligence, does the buyer have full access to the owner and the owner's accountant to request documentation?
Yes. Email the accountant directly, no, but anything facilitated will be supplied. And it's on the owner to provide that documentation. And if they can't, an explanation why or what's going on. And that's also part of the contingencies you list in there to say, we use pretty broad language, approval of financials. Pretty broad. Why? You need to be comfortable and approve it. If you can't do that, don't do the deal. And if you're good with what you're provided, that's great. But if you're not, that's okay. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to love it. That's okay. Protect yourself. You're the one taking the risk and buying the company. Be confident in what you're buying. And if you're not, that's why you include that language and walk away. That happens sometimes. And sometimes it's a good thing.
I mean, every LOI is not going to get a purchase agreement. That's totally understandable.
No, not even close. It'd be nice if it was, but not even close.
So most buyers will only go through due diligence once or twice when you're seeing it daily. What pro tips can you give a buyer to do a successful due diligence?
Great question. I'll start with this. Use every single day you have and start fast. Do not waste time on the front end in due diligence. Nothing's going to kill a momentum of a deal. Then I'll get back to you in a week with my questions. The minute that LOI is signed, you should have a checklist prepared of things you either haven't received or need to receive or confirm and get it done. Always request updated P&Ls every month. Even if it's keep requesting. Don't assume the last P&L you got 3 months ago is accurate because things can change in 3 months. Keep asking for updated financials regardless through the transaction. And if a lender's involved, you're going to be doing that no matter what. But even as an independent buyer, maybe you're funded or you have capital, always request updated financials regardless throughout the transaction. Make sure nothing is going on. Really, the broker should give you a lot of good areas to look to based on the industry if they have familiarity with it. For example, if it's PT clinic, you're going to want to know, like I mentioned earlier, revenue per therapist, any outstanding lawsuits, any types of equipment or issues or leasing concerns. If you've got a lease involved, go start that lease. Go start working on that. Don't wait for the landlord when you've done the whole deal to find out the landlord's not going to agree with you or going to give you a bunch of, it's small steps like that and momentum that matters. If you have a question, ask immediately. If you're not sure, ask the broker, confirm. If they have it, don't have it, keep moving forward and keep a good list of what you've received too. You'd be surprised how many buyers doing due diligence do not keep a record of what they've received and ask for the same thing 3, 4, 5 times. And you just kill your goodwill doing that and you burn people out. Don't do that. Keep good records, move fast, and have a checklist before you get there if you can. And there'll be some things you won't know to look for. That's okay. But I guarantee using Claude or ChatGPT, you can get a pretty dang good due diligence checklist really fast if you don't know where to start. I can promise you.
And you touched on leases. So if the current owner is leasing their facility, someone buys the business, that lease is going to need to be transferred to the new owner. So we hear time and time again that this is often a sticking point because you're no longer negotiating as a buyer with the broker or with the owner. Why do these things cause trouble?
Well, traditionally, it's because the more people in the room, the harder it is to get an agreement on anything. Look at Congress. I mean, it's no pun intended with today's date of recording, but that being said, there are people who use leverage wherever they can. And I've seen some landlords who see leverage and go, oh, a new person? I've been wanting to raise that rent. Well, let's bump it up. Well, now you as a buyer saying, well, that hurts my debt service. That hurts my cash flow. I'm buying this based on X multiple. Now seems to be, those things do happen. And also too, you assume the landlord's going to be timely and understands the deal. The landlord doesn't always know when the closing date's going to be for that reason because the seller does not want the landlord to know when he's walking out the door either, or for fear the landlord may mess around with his lease. Most landlords historically are very good and very accepting. They want to keep their properties occupied. But the biggest problems I face with these big national tenants or bigger areas that are owned by third parties that have property managers, they make life obscenely difficult for deals to get through. I mean, we had one time a 5-year business plan with background checks. I mean, to the point for a $100,000 restaurant, that was more than the bank needed to get a loan started for a lease. So you get where I'm going. It can be, but it's also good to start a little early. I wouldn't start too quick, but just when you get towards the end of due diligence, you should know this makes sense or not. It's time to start getting that lease worked on, especially if you know it's going to be a national type tenant or a stiff landlord. the seller says, hey, look, this guy's been in trouble all the time. Get started early. If the landlord has a great relationship with the seller, you're probably in pretty good shape to get it moved on pretty quick, to be fair.
Okay. That all, I understand, man. And it's always case by case too.
It is, and that's the hardest part with these podcast episodes I've done with other people. It's like I can give you a base painting. The minute you step in that room, it's going to deviate to some degree because every deal is different. And that's what I stress to people. Every deal is different. Understand the boilerplate stuff and then make specific changes you need for your deal.
Hence the benefit of a broker.
You'd be surprised what we can do.
All right. I'm going to bring this up, and this is not a great word that's seen in the industry, retrading. It's bound to happen. What is it, and how do you do it correctly?
Okay. The key word is how to do it correctly more than what is it. What is it? It's when you have it, let's say you've structured your deal, you find a problem, you basically want to renegotiate or retrade that issue. I'm going to harp back to my point I made earlier. When you write your LOI, write it in depth, make it clear. It gives you guidance. Do not write a blank LOI because sellers and buyers will both start retrading on terms they thought we had an oral agreement on or thought we had terms on, and then they want something different. You want to kill a deal faster than anything? Start retrading the whole deal. This is why I say make the LOI clear, get in good information when you can, and present it thoroughly and follow it. When you start retrading each and every term, it gets ugly real fast because people feel like they weren't told in good faith what was going to go on. And for a lot of sellers, this is the only deal they're ever going to do, and it's their retirement, it's their livelihood. They take it very personal. For a lot of buyers, it's, well, hey, look, I found this micro problem, and I found that micro problem. There are problems to retrade on, and there are problems to get over. No business is perfect. And if you go looking in for any one issue to retrade something or renegotiate a large chunk or key issue, you're opening Pandora's box. You just are. So be thorough. If you find a massive flaw in the SDE or the EBITDA with the Q of E, totally understand that. You're going to have to do it. Maybe a key employee quits right before the sale. Maybe the lender comes back and says, look, we just can't lend in this type of industry because of this issue we're facing. We have to have seller financing. I know you didn't want to do seller financing, Mr. Seller, but the bank gave me the term sheet. I put my part down for the 10% SBA. I just can't. They're making me do this. I'm sorry. That's reasonable. That's a fair retrade. That's worth having a discussion on. You're not owed it, but it's reasonable and it's good business. And most pragmatic people will go along with that. It's when I offered you $4 million, now I'm going to offer you $3 million because I just don't like what I saw, but the cash flow at EBITDA is still the same, and it was disclosed in DSIM. No, you wasted a lot of time and pissed a lot of people off in the process.
So when it the right time to, I don't know, if retrade, negotiate, because during the LOI and your due diligence, you're going to find things about the business. Obviously, there's going to be points that you're going to want to use as leverage during negotiation. Is it good practice to, okay, I look at everything. These are my areas of concern. I aggregate that and then renegotiate it. And like one of those areas of concerns is a total no.
Some will be pretty clear it's a dead deal. Let's be honest. Some will be pretty clear.
Yeah.
The others, I'd always recommend, and what we recommend while working through due diligence is identify them, be very sure what you have, look for all possible solutions, and bring a solution to the table, not just, hey, I want something else. It's here's the problem. Here's how we fix it. Here's my suggestion of fixing it that's fair for both parties. And why do I say fair for both parties? If you're, as a buyer, showing up just wanting to beat the seller up, they're going to shut down goodwill-wise and walk out. And vice versa for a seller with a buyer saying, buyer coming, hey, I have to seller finance. I'm sorry. I can't just do a full loan from the bank. All right, well, if I'm going to seller finance and maybe I want a little more here for sticking around longer or a different rate to make me feel more comfortable or pledge collateral. I'll give a great case study here. We had a lawn care service business for $1.4 million. Owner, for some reason, unknown to us, modified his tax returns from the year prior, didn't tell us while the bank was doing due diligence. Something we had no clue was being done. Come to find out, the bank says we only can do 1-1 now on it. We don't feel good, if any. And the seller's, so the buyer says, look, I don't like what the bank's offering either. If I put X amount of 6 figures down, lower 6 figures, will you sell our finance? He goes, yes, I get it's my fault, but I need you to pledge something besides just a seller note. She says, oh, I have rental property. I'll pledge as collateral for X amount to cover the difference. Done deal. That's for both parties, acknowledged an issue, found a solution, agreed, felt comfortable, traded fairly and honestly. And yes, the owner lost some value because of it, but it was his mistake. In this process, the buyer still wanted to go forward, could make it work, and did so. So that's when you look at it and say, okay, we found the problem, we've diagnosed it, let's approach this. And what we do as brokers too, a lot of times, we catch these red flags popping up, even before sometimes the buyer and seller even notice it, just from facilitating it. And we approach both parties saying, look, we're going to have a problem here. We see it coming. Let's sit down and talk about it and find solutions and see how we can work it out. Yes, nobody likes to renegotiate, but we see it going to be a larger issue. Let's get ahead of it now and address it rather than springing it on someone at the very last second at the closing table or in the last hour that makes a dramatic shift in the deal. That's really when it stings to a lot of parties, especially if it was known before.
Yeah, and this all just goes back to a point we've harped on the last couple episodes is the broker wants you to buy the deal. They want to help you get
And we're going to
comfortable
disclose these issues so we don't have this problem at this point. Let's make that clear. We've already tried to do everything we can to address these issues, right, George? Like, make it clear. Here are the flaws. Don't talk about the flaws at the end wanting to renegotiate. You already know what's there. No business is perfect. None.
And once an LOI is accepted, due diligence is done, and the buyer wants to move forward, what happens next?
You start working towards close. Often at that point, towards the end of due diligence, if things are checking out properly, both parties either engage a transaction attorney or their own attorney and start the document production for the APA, the asset purchase agreement, or the stock purchase agreement based on what type of sale it is. That's what getting the right attorney really is important. Do not go hire your family practice attorney who has never handled a business transaction in his life. Please find an attorney that has business transaction experience or at least industry experience, either representing clients in that space. Maybe not always on business transactions, but knows the industry terminology, because those key terminology and understanding in the reps and warranties is going to be so important for both parties. And that's where a lot of that gets lost and missed out on. And that's where true value can be decided post-close when things go wrong, if they do. They really often don't. But things do happen, George. It's just part of doing business. Some are preventable, some are not.
So positive signs you're seeing from the broker side is the prospective buyer says, okay, all right, I'm going to loop in my attorney to put together an agreement. Then the seller loops in their attorney too, or at that time too?
Yeah, unless you have a transaction attorney handling both sides and both parties engage the attorney. We had a great firm here in town get involved in a large hunting product manufacturer, and my broker goes, we know this firm. He told the seller, get ready. This is a 6-figure bill for that team, and they're going to get every single extra penny of it. So the list just went incredibly longer in due diligence and reps and warranties. Just be ready. And we spoke with seller's counsel, and he's like, I get it. I know them. We're going to do our best to mitigate this as much as possible, but I know what we're about to receive. The team is coming. The legal team is coming. It's not one. It's going to be 4 or 5 guys. That's okay. I've dealt with them. We have a relationship. We'll work through it. That's okay.
So then at this point in the transaction, virtually just the purchase agreement, asset purchase agreement, or stock purchase agreement is being negotiated by both parties.
And this is where the LOI is important too. Don't forget to add in. That's when that LOI language structure is going to be referred to by the attorneys. They're going to look at the LOI, look at the base terms, and start implementing that into the purchase agreement. So if you have a weak LOI there, now your legal bill might go up because they're going to start throwing all kinds of stuff in there for each side, wanting to make it what they believe to be the case of the deal.
So that's a key point there. So your LOI is virtually the foundation of your purchase agreement.
Yes. Like I was saying earlier, the more you put in, the better it is down the road. Because the lawyers are going to say, all right, well, what was the LOI or the purchase agreement look like, or the offer? Let me read that first. That's going to give them the baseline terminology and the baseline understanding of what's going on. Granted, not everything will be in there, but it will dictate a lot.
What are commonalities you see in offers today?
Like in what capacity do you mean by commonalities? Like,
so like reps and warranty, is there any like common terms that, a broker or a buyer should, prime themselves to maybe do a decent research on what this is before they hire an attorney and they start throwing all this legal jargon at them? Same thing with the seller. Like a seller is going to have to review some of this stuff too.
I would expect very in-depth reps and warranties. That's being pushed more and more and more. And with more and more legal action out there from business sales, you're seeing different types of precedent in court cases. I would say definitely understand the non-compete language and expect that as a seller and expect to know your jurisdiction. I've had attorneys from firms nationwide come in and say, we want 5 years. Louisiana law's 2. I'm not a lawyer, but we've done a lot of transactions here. It's 2 years. And you have to list every single parish. You can't just say a radius. You have to list we have parishes, not counties, full disclosure. So you have to use parishes. What do you mean? I'm like, well, talk to an attorney in Louisiana. I'm not the attorney, but that's the law. I've seen it done too many times to assume otherwise. And sure enough, understand the local jurisdiction you're dealing with, especially if you're moving from out of area into somewhere. Understand those different, we use Napoleonic code. We don't use civil code, different type of law. So make sure the firm you're working with can do that kind of work in the place where you're doing it. I'd also expect very strong boilerplate language on not just reps and warranties, but on AR, AP. I heard big firms, well, that's market. Well, maybe it's market in Boston. It ain't market in Louisiana. And there may be certain laws in Louisiana that prevent you from doing that. Hitting back to my point, every state's jurisdiction is different. Make sure you have the proper understanding of it. And make sure the firm using clearly articulates that before you get started.
Goes back to hiring a good lawyer that has experience.
Again, you'd be surprised. I mean, I've had a family attorney print out a 60-page APA document and draw some red ink on it and send back some notes for a multi-million-dollar deal. And the buyer goes, for the love of God, tell the seller, get a new damn attorney, please. Because his fear was, I'm not going to do anything wrong. But if something does happen, this guy's going to get mad at me and blame me. And I'm like, look at your attorney who didn't even know what he was doing. Go get a good attorney and understand what the cost may be. There are models out there that do flat fees. There are some that bill by the hour. The better your LOI is, the better documentation prepared, the better agreements and understandings drafted, reduces time where the lawyers have to touch everything and run a bill up. Understand when your attorney is doing that versus doing you a service. I know it's hard, but you have to have some relation to that understanding of it. And we can recommend good ones to you if you want help. We're here to help. Remember, we have connections to these guys. We're happy to refer to ones that we know do a good job and want to get a deal done and not run up a bill. That's no disrespect to attorneys, but there are those attorneys I've dealt with that just run up a damn bill every time I cross that firm. The damn firm's going to run up a $30,000 bill. And you know what? We had one firm in town use a $200 million template for a $2 million sale. The reps and warranties were so out of sight, it was obnoxious. And note this, the buyer did, he fired that firm, got a firm we recommended, it was done in 30 days. Spent 20 grand for nothing. Just know that legal cost is going to get expensive too. It can get expensive, so be prepared for that. You're doing a multi, M&A deal, you could be looking at a 6-figure check for legal fees. Just understand that and write that into your capital too. Understand that.
And then after everything's agreed upon, hopefully the legal bill hasn't gone too high, and both parties agree and it's signed. What is the general flow of the buyer taking control of the business, and how are funds distributed to the seller?
Great question. So obviously funds are sent to the lawyer's escrow account. Based on any type of closing documentation language, they could be dispersed immediately. Some may be held in escrow for performance. If there's an earnout component, that may be structured, who holds it, how it's dispersed, or if proceeds come from the generation from the business, that may be sent to an escrow agent to be dispersed. All that varies by deal. Typically, buyers take control that following day, or at the end of the day, the owner, the smaller the business, the more likelihood they go over that right then, introduce themselves, start the process. Larger deals, you may see a slower transition into, here's the new owner. It may be a few days, it may be a week where the new guy gets in, gets information, and then a formal announcement is made, perhaps, especially for a larger company, 40, 50, 60 employees. Rarely is it the day it's done, someone walks in and says, here's your new boss, bye, good luck. It's not that simple. Much we'd like for it to be. And typically 99% of the time, employees do not know a sale has occurred. Maybe one key person, maybe two, if necessary, to sign an employment agreement or some kind of agreement for the lender was done. But most employees have no clue going on. And they don't need to know, honestly. And as a buyer, if your whole goal is to talk to every major employee or every employee before the sale, that's not going to happen. So again, in your LOI, if the broker disclosed key employees, and these are vital to the success of the business, whether it's licensing or a very unique skill set, you want to mention in the LOI, hey, I need to at least get an employment agreement or some kind of understanding on these guys before the sale goes down. Again, this all goes back to starting with a stronger foundation to have better success at the end.
All right. We've done 3 episodes here on how to buy a business. I want to give you the last words here.
Honestly, the first thing I would do if I'm looking to buy a business, whether it's your first time, last time, truly know what you want to buy. Do not start your journey rambling in 5 different directions. Do your best to look at what's going on in the market, look at trends, try and anticipate some degree what's going to go on in the next 10, 20 years of life. Be very harsh on that decision process. Be very thorough what you think you can do and identify that area and start researching it before you go to buy the business. Research it, understand it, and then go look for business that matches that profile of what you can't do and what you can work with. Do not chase cash flow. Do not chase profitability. Because there's a lot of things I both know we're not going to do with our spare time. I'm never going to run a restaurant. I'm never going to want to run a bar. So I don't care if it's making $1 million. I don't want to do it. So just know where you stand. If you start that process correctly, you understand the market you want to be in, and you fully have done your homework. When you show up to the broker and the seller, you understand terminology. You've done some homework. Your goodwill there will carry you a lot further along, and you'll know better questions to ask and help formulate your LOI. So start there. Do that part right, and find good resources then after that point to help guide you along your journey, whether it's good lenders, good brokers, an advisor, whoever. Then bring them into the picture. You can give them a clear picture of what you want, and they can help you execute it.
I think that's the perfect way to end. Brandon, really appreciate you
Yes, sir.
carving out so much time to help everybody out. This is how I bought this. Thanks, Brandon.